Hi everyone, I'm Deirdre Breakenridge, CEO of Pure Performance Communications, and we are live at Nasdaq's market site in Times Square. And joining me is Elizabeth Sosnow. She's the managing partner of Bliss Integrated Communication. Hey Elizabeth, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. So just wanted to chat with you. There's so many things going on in our world today. Technology has really changed the way that we operate, of course driven by consumers and what they're doing. So how do you feel technology has changed the way your clients are communicating?
Well, technology has touched and changed, I think, most everything that any of us imagine doing. You know, there are talking refrigerators, which does tend to change your
Yes,
behavior. If I think back to where I started as a young PR professional, I was at 25 writing a media pitch, mailing it, waiting a couple of days, then talking to a reporter and hoping that I would have, kind of a one-off conversation that would lead to a media result. Now, if I fast forward and I get back in the time machine to today, integrated marketing, every piece of it has an opportunity really due to the blessings of technology. If you can, in an instant, look at trending topics on Twitter and figure out what matters, what's the news of the day, or dive deeper into your website analytics and discover what's exciting your prospects and customers, or if you can, look at an email campaign and imagine that there's a new way of communication with somebody that just didn't exist, that's a lot more than what I had when I was 25. I now, as a brand, can determine the motivations and the behaviors that will lead to an ongoing relationship. It's not that one-off, it's ongoing, and that's powerful. That's a real competitive advantage.
No, absolutely, and we know that it's consumers who are driving this. We have to figure out where they are, and the fact that we can dive in and see what they like and their preferences. But I know that businesses are faced with challenges, and the challenges are changing by the week. So what do you think are the biggest challenges for businesses, and how do you think they're doing with social media?
Well, it's a mixed report card, I suppose, and there's some real reasons for that, right? So one challenge that's happening this year is really, can we as business marketers identify those micro-influencers, those folks that may own a very small tribe, but it might be a tribe that's hugely important to your brand. Another challenge is trying to understand the technology stack and to understand revenue attribution and to figure out what really is a puzzle that is not entirely solved from a marketing perspective, let alone just kind of keep up with the pace of change that's a second-by-second moving opportunity and challenge. But from where I sit, the biggest challenge, the one that we see again and again that makes it hard to do our jobs, is clutter. There's too much of everything. There are too many platforms, there are too many voices, there are too many keywords, there's too many pieces of lookalike content, and that's tricky. I mean, the positive from a social media point of view is if you come up with a good idea, there is that crowd waiting for you. The too much,
they want to hear it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
It works into your advantage. So we had last week for one client a real-time monitoring opportunity that suddenly yielded a chance for our brand to be funny. Our client to get
you can't plan for that.
No, and it was so exciting for us to see that. In 24 hours, they went from sort of a standard selling posture to really engaging in this whimsical and funny conversation. And the best part for them, a new campaign idea came out of that dialogue. So they were richly rewarded for it.
Oh, that's really good. No, you definitely can't plan, but I want to go back to what you said about the clutter. So we know there's a lot of clutter. And sometimes I really think we need to look on the inside of the organization, because when there's clutter on the outside, something tells me that all the different areas are not working together. So how are you dealing with the silos? Are you noticing with the organizations that you work with, silos are breaking down? Have we seen any progress?
Well, that's a great question, and one I was dealing with as recently as about an hour ago. I will say this, marriage is hard, right? And it's really hard if the two partners aren't equally committed to each other. And so I will say that depending on the client or the prospect that we're talking about, marriages do share a sort of common thread of inequity sometimes. I will say there are some commonalities, but it comes down more to size. So smaller companies have marketing departments where everyone's wearing multiple hats. So they lean in together, they're more willing to innovate together, and they're more willing to kind of so what together. What's headed next? What's going to happen next? On the other hand, larger companies, obviously larger silos, larger budgets, but sometimes the so what discussion, the evolution discussion, is happening a state or two states away. And that's tricky, that's hard to overcome. There's one real potential that I see happening right now, though, lead gen. Lead gen is the common engine that may finally get the silos to knit together. Even if you have to co-own it with 2 or 3 other departments, when we finally have a mechanism that allows us to focus collectively on what matters to the target, the brand really starts to benefit, and I think some of those walls start to break down.
Well, I think you make a really good point. So if lead gen is bringing all of those silos together, because after all, we're all really on the same team, and it's the same goal. But, you know, it speaks to the data and how much information and finding the value together. But at the same time, you have to balance out with the sizzle and the creative story. So when you step back as a professional, what is more important? Is it the art of what you're doing, or is it the science?
Yeah, there's a little chicken egg in there, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so going way back, I'm a bookworm. So that means my first impulse, love it, Jane Austen is my friend.
Oh my gosh, mine too.
So going way back, what I'd say is that my first impulse would always be to go for the creative. And there's no question that for myself personally, I'm in the kind of earned business because I love how storytelling can actually achieve business objectives. That's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of. On the other hand, I'm just old enough now that I'm beginning and can see with my clients the rush of how data can supercharge your storytelling. It's tremendously exciting. And when we think ahead to where we're going, I'd argue honestly that the measurement and the data may ultimately become more meaningful. It's a kind of decision tree moment, and I think we've arrived at it.
Measurement, value. I did want to ask you, because I know you work with a lot of financial services in that area, companies. So being that it's a regulated industry, how do you feel they're doing with some of the new ways to communicate, and specifically social media?
Well, I think most folks know that financial services as an industry was later to the party. And it was for a very good reason, as you pointed out. There were important regulations. All of those companies needed to be prudent and smart about how they approached it. However, honestly, at this point, social media is table stakes for the industry. They already recognize the power of talking to their customers, to their prospects, talking to influencers, and talking to reporters, by the way, as well. And meaningfully, because marketing budgets are involved, they also get that now they can extend the life of those content assets that they've already created. So there's a chance now for the industry to really do meaningful things. We have a client who, in the last few months, started a new campaign where they were rallying a number of women influencers who covered financial services issues to get them, as the influencers, to take a pledge to protect women's investing choices for the future.
That's great.
It's the kind of thing that, honestly, 5 years ago we couldn't have imagined doing, and now it's here, and it's exciting.
And it feels good. That's great. It's so good to see that kind of progress. If you could just give a little bit of advice, and I know this is a very broad question, but what would you say to businesses so that they can make their communication more strategic?
So here's my plea, I suppose. And I've seen this no matter if we're talking about a small company or a large company, doesn't matter what industry it is. I don't think brands spend as much time as they can three-dimensionalizing who their customers and their targets are. It's not enough, in the end of the day, just to know what will convert someone to a selling posture for a business or a service. If we really want to have those genuine, authentic relationships with them as brands, then we have to know what keeps them up at night. And things that may feel wildly different for the company. For example, it may be incredibly important to understand not just if someone is a mom and a working mom, but if they live in Connecticut and if they have one child in middle school and one child in the high school. Those clues, when you start to enrich the personas of the people that you're targeting, it makes it much more possible to kind of get to a dialogue. There are lots of ways to do that. You can do an annual year-over-year study. You can get much smarter about your online monitoring and look for those emerging conversation triggers. You can start thinking about your customer service center very differently and flip it on its ear to become a customer relations center. That would yield a whole bunch of different insights, and I think is a real competitive advantage for the brands that are willing to go farther in their R&D investments.
Absolutely. I think what I'm hearing you say is that it really is getting much more intimate with your customers, understanding them, which makes us step back and kind of look to say, not only do we have to prove value, but with all this information we have, we're going to improve our communications. Would you agree?
I agree, and I see it already happening, which is the most fun to be around.
We're very lucky. All right, easy question. Where can people find out more about you and Bliss Integrated Communication?
Well, you can check out our website, which is blissintegrated.com. We have our blog on there, and we have our podcast, which is called Fresh Brewed News. And if you want to hear more from me, I am actually launching a vlog series starting later this month called Marketing Espresso Shots. And I'm going to be sharing kind of quick 90-minute tips and
Not
tricks.
Exactly quick.
That would be tough. That would be long for both of us.
Great. Well, that sounds awesome. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with me today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.